Tes.
Cek, cek.
Kira tak boleh sing cilik lah jago. Di mana? Oh, uang
ngomong apa ya, gak mungkin.
gede nggak sih? Pakai baju bikin.
Gede nggak sih, tapi caranya
Yang
kegedean.
Cari yang
mana?
Cek, cek, tes. Tes, 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 tes.
Welcome to the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University. Located in Gunung Pati, Semarang, Semarang State University is known as environmentally friendly institution with over 4,300 students across 6 major departments. Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University has 6 major departments: Guidance and Counseling, Education Technology Curriculum, Non-Formal Education, Psychology, Primary Teacher Education, and Early Childhood Education. The faculty offers 4 master study programs: Curriculum Development, Non-Formal Education, Early Childhood Education, and Guidance and Counseling. It also provides 1 doctoral program in Guidance and Counseling. The Guidance and Counseling Study Program offers counseling services in schools and within society. The curriculum itself emphasizes conservation insight and international reputation. This program qualifies individuals to become educators, research assistants, laboratory assistants, and motivational figures in guidance and counseling. They embody Pancasila as their guiding principle along the conservation, insight, and an international reputation. The Education Technology Curriculum Study Program focuses on developing educational and learning technologies, along with additional competencies in curriculum engineering, education, and research, specializing in curriculum, learning, and information technology. The Psychology Study Program has several domestic and international cooperation partners, including those in the industrial sector. Additionally, it offers various well-equipped facilities, such as laboratories for psychometric and measurement, inclusive education and development, community, cyber and environmental studies, industrial behavior, as well as health and clinical psychology. Supported by trend-setting facilities, the Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University, also provides excellent service. To support all available areas of interest, the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University facilitates each department with modern facilities and infrastructure, while continuously enhancing its accreditation.
Segenap Sivitas Akademika Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan dan Psikologi UNES memiliki komitmen yang kuat untuk mewujudkan visi menjadi fakultas terputasi dunia, pelopor kecemerlangan pendidikan yang berwawasan konservasi dalam bidang ilmu pendidikan dan psikologi. Sejalan dengan visi tersebut, maka semua prodi yang ada di Fakultas Pendidikan dan Psikologi kita siapkan untuk memiliki standar internasional. Antara lain, kita ikutkan semua prodi yang ada mengikuti akreditasi internasional. Alhamdulillah, 2 prodi yaitu pendidikan anak usia dini dan bimbingan dan konseling telah terakreditasi internasional EKES. 3 prodi yang lain, PLS, Teologi Pendidikan, dan PGSD saat ini sedang dalam proses mengikuti akreditasi internasional. 2 kelas internasional yang telah dimiliki oleh FPP, 1 kelas internasional PG PAUD dan 1 kelas internasional psikologi. Depan kita siapkan untuk membuka program double degree untuk mengakselerasi peningkatan kualitas penelitian dan publikasi ilmiah dosen. Maka program kerjasama penelitian luar negeri dengan perguruan tinggi GS100 dan juga kerjasama penelitian dengan dosen di dalam negeri akan terus kita tingkatkan. Penyelenggaraan pendidikan di Fakultas Pendidikan dan Psikologi difokuskan bukan hanya pada penguatan intelektual, namun juga pada penguatan karakter, serta hendak mewujudkan psychological well-being pada kalangan mahasiswa, dosen, dan tenaga kependidikan.
FIPP Inspiratif.
Welcome to the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University. Located in Gunung Pati, Semarang, Semarang State University is known as environmentally friendly institution with over 4,300 students across 6 major departments. Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University has 6 major departments: Guidance and Counseling, Education Technology Curriculum, Non-Formal Education, Psychology, Primary Teacher Education, and Early Childhood Education. The faculty offers 4 master study programs: Curriculum Development, Non-Formal Education, Early Childhood Education, and Guidance and Counseling. It also provides 1 doctoral program in Guidance and Counseling. The Guidance and Counseling Study Program offers counseling services in schools and within society. The curriculum itself emphasizes conservation insight and international reputation. This program qualifies individuals to become educators, research assistants, laboratory assistants, and motivational figures in guidance and counseling. They embody Pancasila as their guiding principle along the conservation insight and an international reputation. The Education Technology Curriculum Study Program focuses on developing educational and learning technologies, along with additional competencies in curriculum engineering, education, and research, specializing in curriculum, learning, and information technology. The Psychology Study Program has several domestic and international cooperation partners, including those in the industrial sector.
Untuk Bapak Ibu dan saudara-saudari peserta bisa maju ke kursi depan, nggih. Saya ulangi, untuk Bapak Ibu dan saudara-saudari peserta bisa untuk maju ke kursi depan.
Itu siapa? Randy buat saya. Ya, mungkin satu ronde. Tapi kan ada yang For all the participants, please kindly stand up as the Dean, Vice Deans, the Faculty Senate, and the Associate Professor will be entering the room shortly. Thank you. Silakan berdiri bagi para hadirin. The participants may now take a seat. Silakan duduk kembali. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To the Honorable Dean, Mr. Professor Dr. Edi Purwanto, MSI. The Associate Professor, Dr. Shirley Put, the Vice Deans of Faculty of Education and Psychology, the Senate of Faculty of Education and Psychology, the lecturers of Universitas Negeri Semarang, and all the participants in this guest lecture. Welcome to Universitas Negeri Semarang's guest lecture with the theme of Inclusive Education in Australia. My name is Athena Ratu Srengenge as your Master of Ceremony. Before we start our agenda, let us recite our prayers in hopes that this guest lecture will conduct smoothly. Amen. The next agenda is welcoming speech by the Dean. For Mr. Professor Dr. Edi Purwanto, the time is yours.
Before that, we might want to have Indonesia Raya. Please stand. Thank you. It's okay.
Afterwards, we will sing Mars Unes.
Negeri Semarang menjulang setinggi di angkasa, mencetak tenaga terdidik yang bangun hebat daya pura, berlandaskan Pancasila sakti, Undang-Undang Dasar 45, Sabari dan perguruan tinggi sebagai dasar pengabdiannya. Majulah Universitas Negeri Semarang,
rencana mau di Jakarta.
pendidik bangsa menempat ilmu, berbangsa Indonesia baru, memelihara dan mengembangkan ilmu murni dan kependidikan, melimpah berkarapannya, semoga umurnya selalu jaya.
Simpul segi 4 tuh tadi Ir.
Thank you. The participants may now take a seat. Hadirin dipersilahkan duduk kembali. Moving on, our next agenda is welcoming speech by our dean. For Professor Dr. Edi Purwanto MSI, the time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank to Allah the Almighty Good, who have been a lot of blessing and mercy, so we can attend this meeting in good condition. It is a very great pleasure for me as Dean of Faculty of Education and Psychology to warmly welcome our distinguished guest, Professor Put from University of Queensland, and my audience from Faculty of Education. Actually, today I'm very proud and very happy because we have one faculty member, Professor Prup, as the adjunct professor in University of Semarang State University. Since maybe today, we will make the collaboration, and the student can study with them. Professor Put will get many projects in our university faculty, especially in research collaboration, and also in teaching and other activities. So I think it is the good for many students to get benefit to improve your qualification as the student at Faculty of Education and Psychology. So, and today we will have the guest lecture in the topic of the inclusive education. I think it is very relevant to our country that we have so many diversity, especially in the kind of student when some of them have the disability. So in our country, we can give support, big support for them. So all students can reach the achievement in optimal level. So once again, very thanks to Professor Put, who attend in Indonesia, maybe in some one, so we can make real collaboration to between Faculty of Education in Indonesia and University of Queensland in Queensland. I think it is the best opportunity to improve the student activity, and it's also maybe a lecturer. So I pray to Allah, Alhamdulillah, I hope this program will get the objective. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Edi. Before we continue, for Professor Dr. Edi, Dr. Shirley Put, the Vice Deans, and the Faculty Senate, please kindly step forward.
Associate Professor Sireli Put. I call to our friend that she's look-alike Australian artist Rebecca Gilling, yeah, the artist from Return to Eden film. It is in early 2000, I think. Associate Professor Sireli Put, the Faculty of Education and Psychology would like to congratulate you and to thank you very much for your willingness to get involved in our effort to give a better service to our country and our students by collaboration with you as a young professor at the University of Negeri Semarang. We are very proud of your professional achievement and your expertise in inclusive education. We look forward to our collaboration in teaching, research, and publication. Please allow us to present you with a token of appreciation.
The Dean will now deliver the certificate of the guest lecturer.
Mbak, bentar aja.
Langsung deh. The Dean, Vice Deans, the Faculty Senate, and the Associate Professor may now exit the room. For all the participants, please kindly stand up. Thank you. Hadirin dipersilahkan untuk berdiri. For all the participants, we will be taking a short break. Please stay seated for our next agenda. Thank you. Hadirin dipersilahkan duduk kembali.
Welcome to the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University. Located in Gunung Pati, Semarang, Semarang State University is known as environmentally friendly institution with over 4,300 students across 6 major departments. Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University has 6 major departments: Guidance and Counseling, Education Technology Curriculum, Non-Formal Education, Psychology, Primary Teacher Education, and Early Childhood Education. The faculty offers 4 master study programs: Curriculum Development, Non-Formal Education, Early Childhood Education, and Guidance and Counseling. It also provides 1 doctoral program in Guidance and Counseling. The Guidance and Counseling Study Program offers counseling services in schools and within society. The curriculum itself emphasizes conservation, insight, and international reputation. This program qualifies individuals to become educators, research assistants, laboratory assistants, and motivational figures in guidance and counseling. They embody Pancasila as their guiding principle along the conservation, insight, and an international reputation. The Education Technology Curriculum Study Program focuses on developing educational and learning technologies, along with additional competencies in curriculum engineering, education, and research, specializing in curriculum, learning, and information technology. The Psychology Study Program has several domestic and international cooperation partners, including those in the industrial sector. Additionally, it offers various well-equipped facilities, such as laboratories for psychometric and measurement, inclusive education and development, community, cyber and environmental studies, industrial behavior, as well as health and clinical psychology. Supported by trend-setting facilities, the Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University, also provides excellent service. To support all available areas of interest, the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University facilitates each department with modern facilities and infrastructure, while continuously enhancing its accreditation.
Segenap Sivitas Akademika Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan dan Psikologi UNES memiliki komitmen yang kuat untuk mewujudkan visi menjadi fakultas terputasi dunia, pelopor kecemerlangan pendidikan yang berwawasan konservasi dalam bidang ilmu pendidikan dan psikologi. Sejalan dengan visi tersebut, maka semua prodi yang ada di Fakultas Pendidikan dan Psikologi kita siapkan untuk memiliki standar internasional. Antara lain, kita ikutkan semua prodi yang ada mengikuti akreditasi internasional. Alhamdulillah, 2 prodi yaitu pendidikan anak usia dini dan bimbingan dan konseling telah terakreditasi internasional EKES. 3 prodi yang lain, PLS, Teknologi Pendidikan, dan PGSD saat ini sedang dalam proses mengikuti akreditasi internasional. 2 kelas internasional yang telah dimiliki oleh FBP, 1 kelas internasional PG PAUD, dan 1 kelas internasional psikologi. Ke depan kita siapkan untuk membuka program double degree untuk mengakselerasi peningkatan kualitas penelitian dan publikasi ilmiah dosen. Maka program kerjasama penelitian luar negeri dengan perguruan tinggi GS100 dan juga kerjasama penelitian dengan dosen di dalam negeri akan terus kita tingkatkan. Penyelenggaraan pendidikan di Fakultas Pendidikan dan Psikologi difokuskan bukan hanya pada penguatan intelektual, namun juga pada penguatan karakter, serta hendak mewujudkan psychological well-being pada kalangan mahasiswa, dosen, dan tenaga kependidikan.
FIPP Inspiratif.
Welcome to the Faculty of Education and Psychology at Semarang State University. Located in Gunung Pati, Semarang, Semarang State University is known as environmentally friendly institution with over 4,300 students across 6 major departments. Faculty of Education and Psychology, Semarang State University has 6 major departments: Guidance and Counseling, Education Technology Curriculum, Non-Formal Education, Psychology, Primary Teacher Education, and Early Childhood Education. The faculty offers 4 master study programs: Curriculum Development, Non-Formal Education, Early Childhood Education, and Guidance and Counseling. It also provides 1 doctoral program in Guidance and Counseling. The Guidance and Counseling Study Program offers counseling services in schools and within society. The curriculum itself emphasizes conservation, insight, and international reputation. This program qualifies individuals to become educators, research assistants, laboratory assistants, and motivational figures in guidance and counseling. They embody Pancasila as their guiding principle, along with conservation, insight, and an international reputation. The Education Technology Curriculum Study Program focuses on developing educational and learning technologies, along with additional competencies in curriculum engineering, education, and research, specializing in curriculum, learning, and information technology. The Psychology Study Program has several domestic.
For all the participants, our agenda will begin shortly. Please kindly stand up as the Dean, Vice Deans, Faculty Senate, and the Associate Professor will be entering the room. Thank you. Please kindly take a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to our main agenda. I hope you're just as excited as I am. The guest lecture will be led by our moderator, Ms. Alfine Loretha, SVD MPD. Before that, I will now read her CV first. Ms. Alfine is currently the faculty member of Non-Formal Education in Universitas Negeri Semarang. She finished her undergraduate degree in Non-Formal Education in 2017 and finished her master's degree in non-formal education as well from Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta in 2020. Her field of expertise include early childhood education, andragogy, and many others. Please come forward, Ms. Alfine. The time is yours.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Athena, for your hard welcome. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. How is your day? Good? You have a great day. Thank you very much for coming in the Saturday event, because it's very special occasion. So I would like to say thank you very much for your coming. and the Honorable Dean Faculty of Education and Psychology, the distinguished guest from Queensland University, Associate Professor Sirali Pot, PhD, and the Honorable Vice Dean and Principal of Education and Psychology Faculty, and and also the Honorable Lecturer, and also all the participants in today's guest lecture. So, ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, inclusive education is become essential aspects in education. Even our government have been stated in the government statute number 13 in 2020 about decent accommodation for disabilities. But we found out many obstacles in the implementation, such as the lack of awareness, attitudes, understanding, and the lack of facilities. Meanwhile, inclusive learning environment provides students with and without disabilities many opportunities to establish relationship with their peers. So that's why Education and Psychology Faculty Universitas Negeri Semarang concerned to provide best education practice, including inclusive education. That's why we already invite here Professor Sirali Pot, PhD from Queensland, and she is a professor from Education Faculty. And she also expert in the positive behavior support, disability discrimination in education, and inclusive of children with disabilities. So please, for all the participants, if you have any question, you can prepare the question, and we can have long discussion in the question and answer session. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Professor Sirali Pot, PhD. You have 45 minutes for presentation, and then we will have Q&A session. Okay. No, you can, as long as you're comfortable.
G'day everyone. Thank you so much for giving up a Saturday. That's real dedication as students to come in on a Saturday. So I don't know if your lecturers are paying you to be here or you're just very dedicated students, but I'm very grateful that you've come to join me. I know you're videoing, but would you mind if I stood down the front? Would that upset your video? No? I'm going to move then. Okay, thank you to my friends for putting up the slides. And thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate the chance to be here. Thank you to my dear colleagues, Dr. Petra and Frisco, who've been looking after me so kindly for the last 2 days, and to the faculty and the Dean and Vice Dean for the invitation. I'm so grateful to be here. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about inclusive education. And any assistance with the tech? I'm going to let the gentleman here work out the tech support. So I'm just going to say I come from Brisbane, and the town traditionally is known as Meanjin. So white settlers called it Brisbane, but our traditional owners called it Meanjin. And I always want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the places where I come from. So I live and work on the land of the Turrbal and the Yuggera people. They're the two traditional owners of the lands at the University of Queensland. And so I acknowledge their contribution that they have made. We work on stolen lands. The lands were taken by colonisers. So I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which I work, and I acknowledge the contribution that they continue to make, because our lands have always been lands of culture and learning. So my friends are working very hard to get tech support sorted. If it's easier for you, I could just say next slide. Would that be easier? That is also not easier. Perfect. So what you see on this slide is a picture of a traditional piece of Aboriginal artwork that was commissioned for the University of Queensland. And you might look closely and see this little thing that looks like a snake that weaves its way through the picture. But what that is the river on which I work. The river is called the Maiwar, or the Brisbane River, and our university is positioned on the lands of the river. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And you might tap one more time. Just once more, thank you. So I might not look like this very much anymore, but these are 3 photos of me. I thought you might like to get to know me a little bit when I do this presentation. So the very first photo is me when I was 4 years old, starting primary or elementary school. And I already knew in that photo that I wanted to be a teacher. Even though I'd never met a teacher and didn't know really what teachers did, I just thought that I liked telling people stuff. So the joy of being a teacher is you get to tell people things. The photo in the middle is me in year 8, I think. And in that picture, we had started reading a book about children with disability. And when I read that book, I made the decision that I wanted to work with children with disability in schools. And then the last, they're out of order. This one is me in year 8. Looking very awkward. And then this is me when I finished year 12 and knowing that I wanted to go to university. The first person in my entire family to go to university. How many of you are the first in your family to go to university? Is there anyone here who's the first in your family to go to university? I have some people nodding, and then other people know you've been lucky to have people go before you. On the next slide, you'll see 2 photos of me. One more. Thank you so much. So this photo here is me, thank you so much, in my very first year of teaching. I was 19 years old, very young. How many of you are younger than 19? Anyone younger than 19? No, you are all older than 19. Okay, so in my first year of teaching, I was 19 years old. Some of the children that I was teaching were older than me, which was a little bit scary. And then I moved on from being a teacher and I later became an advisor. So the next photo is me being a government advisor and helping schools to support children with disability. Oh, going backwards, so let's try the other way. And then in my personal interest, just so you know one thing about me, you mightn't know what that is because it's so hot in Indonesia, I don't think that this is a sport. But in my spare time, I am an ice skater. So I like really cold climates. I am struggling a little with how hot it is here, but you're very accustomed to the heat. I like the snow and the cold. So a little bit about me, in my spare time, I like to do ice skating. And then a final thing about me, this is my family. So in the photo, you see my little girl. Her name is Maisie, and yes, she is a dog. And I think she's very cute. And then that is a photo of my husband, who's a photographer, and he owned an art gallery where he exhibited his work. So my family are with me in this presentation today. So for those of you not familiar with Australia, this is a map of Australia. And I live in the green section of Australia. So this is home for me right here. So if you ever want to come and visit Brisbane, this is where I live and where I work, also known as Meanjin. So let's talk about inclusive education, but we can't talk about inclusive education without talking about special education. Because for children with disability, in Australia, at one point, they did not get to go to school at all. And you have some children here in Indonesia who have disability who don't get to go to school. Because parents were really upset about that, they lobbied the government to create special schools. And it meant that children with disability didn't have to stay home. They got to go to school like everybody else. But the difference was they had to go to a school only with other children who had disability. They didn't get to meet other children who didn't have disability. What it also meant is often they had to travel a long way to go to school. Other children could walk to their school, it was nice and close, maybe they could get a small bus ride, but for some children with disability they had to travel a long way. Some of them even had to change states, or what you might call provinces or regions. They had to move to different areas and they had to live at a place which was also their school. So we started special education a long time ago, even older than me. Back in 1883 was the first time we set up a school for children with disability. And it was for children who were blind, so that they could go to school. And over time, we increased the types of schools that we have available for children with disability. So initially, we only had schools for children who were blind. Then we built schools for children who were deaf, and so they would get to go to school. Here's a picture of one of our oldest schools in Queensland, and the children in this photo are all blind. So that is them sitting on the stairs of their school, and that school still exists today, but it's no longer a school. So the building is still there, and the people who work in that building, they make braille resources for blind children for all over Australia. So they put materials into braille format so that children who are blind can read it with their fingers. Then in the 1900s, 1908 specifically, we started other types of schools, and we had different names for these schools. We used an awful name that we don't use anymore. We used a name that said Schools for Blind, Deaf and Dumb Children. Now, we don't use that word dumb anymore because it's an insult if you call somebody dumb. What it did mean back then was children who didn't speak. So it became an insult because what they thought is if you couldn't speak, you couldn't think. And then if you couldn't think, you weren't smart. So they called you dumb. So we don't use that word anymore because it's become an insult. We just talk about children who are non-verbal. They don't communicate using words. They communicate in other ways. And we can see we started to spread where those schools are. So instead of those schools being down the bottom in Meanjin or Brisbane that I pointed to, you've now got schools moving across the whole state. And here's a picture of the children from those schools on their playground, and you can see there's a lot of people in a very small amount of space. And then over time we developed more and more classes. So we developed classes for children who weren't learning at the same speed as other children. And they called them backward classes or opportunity classes. And again, language these days we don't use anymore. And you can see here's a picture of some of those old classes and how many children are in that room. I know you have big classes here in Indonesia, but in Australia, our class sizes are pretty small. In our first year of school, there are no more than 22 children in the classroom. That is the biggest class size you can have. Then from years 1 through to 10, the maximum number of children you can have in a room is 28. And then in year 11 and 12, when children are getting ready to go to university, the biggest class size is 25. So does that mean you all want to leave Indonesia and come and be teachers in Australia because our classes are a little bit smaller? Not yet, I haven't convinced you yet. All right, so I'm going to skip a little bit of the history because we've only got a little bit of time. Many of the things that children learnt in that school was how to do a job. So they weren't learning to read, They weren't learning to write. They were learning how to do their job. So you can see these boys were learning to do some sort of mechanical, electrical work. I don't know why that's so feedbacky, but you're recording, so I have to keep using the microphone. Skipping a couple of years, you can see how small the classes were. Tiny little class with only the 2, 4, 6 children in that room with one teacher. Alright, I'm going to tell you a little bit now about inclusive education. Because Australia, like Indonesia, we signed certain conventions that came out by the United Nations. So the first one we signed was the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And then going forward a bit more, we were a signatory to the World Declaration by the United Nations. Then we created some legislation in Australia. And that legislation was really important, and it's different to what you have here. In Australia, by law, every child can go to school and they get to choose their school. So if I live in a town and there is a government school in that town and I want my child to go to that school, by law, they are allowed to go there. And it doesn't matter if that's a state school or a private school. Parents have full choice about where they enrol their child, regardless of whether that child has a disability. That's a little bit different in terms of our rules. And these pieces of legislation, our Discrimination Act and the United Nations Conventions, they're the things that allowed us to create those rules that let children with disability go to any school they want to go to. Now, what that means is in creating those laws, we are now legally obligated. It is the law that every teacher must accommodate every child in their classroom. So if you've got 25 children in your room and one of them is blind and one of them is deaf and one of them has autism and one of them has Down syndrome and one of them uses a wheelchair and one of them is gifted and the rest of the children are learning at whatever level they're up to, it is the job of the teacher to meet the needs of all of those children. So that means we who work in universities, we have a big job to do. Our job is to prepare every teacher so they feel confident that when they graduate from university, they can go out to their classroom and teach whoever is in that room. Know how to teach a child who's blind. Know how to teach a child who has Down syndrome. Know how to teach a child who is deaf. We also have resources, money, and specialists and teacher aides who help you do that. So that money can be used to employ staff who can come and help you. It could be used for you to go to some training to learn more about how to teach someone with a particular disability. But all of our classes are set up so that every child is accommodated. And this piece of legislation is what tells us that teachers must do this. So we have disability standards for education that mean it's the job of the teacher to provide adjustments. Swap over. So I ask you a question. If I use
bahwa kalau sekali bukan
I see we have someone on Zoom. Perfect, thank you. I was trying to work out whether Ghost was talking, but it was one of our Zoom friends. Welcome to Zoomers. Perfect. Okay, no problem at all. I have no idea hand up if you know this term, if you've heard it before. The term is Universal Design for Learning. Who's heard of that term? Okay. Universal Design for Learning is a way of helping teachers to know how to accommodate all of the children in their class. So we make sure at our university that all children, all students who are graduating to be teachers are trained in Universal Design for Learning. All right, let's get to some interesting things. Here are the number of schools that we have in Australia. So you can see in total, we have almost 10,000 schools. We have primary schools, secondary schools, so that would be a combination of your secondary and your high school. We okay? Are our chatters okay? We've got a couple of chats there. Is it that they're having trouble hearing? It's okay? All right. But we still have special schools in Australia. And you might wonder, if I'm here talking about inclusive education, why do we still have special schools? If every child can go to the school that they want to, why might we still have special schools only for children with disability? The reason is that parents want them. There are still some parents that would prefer for their child to go to a special school. Special schools often have very small classes, between 6 and 8 children. They nearly always have a teacher who has been trained in special education, and they generally will say they think their child is safer there, they don't get bullied by other children, and they feel like their child is safe in terms of the environment, because special schools will often have high fences and locked gates, so if the child likes to run away, they're protected within the grounds. Our primary schools don't have that. They might have low fences that children can climb over. They might have big classes, 25 children, and they might have a teacher who has done a general education degree but is not special ed qualified. So for that reason, we still have around 500 special schools. Over our history, when the legislation came in, the number of special schools started to go down, and they stayed down for quite a while, and now they are creeping up again. So we are getting more people who are looking at special schools as an option. Of our children with disability, about 80% of them go to a regular school, and about 20% of them choose to go to a special school. We do have some special schools that are only for certain types of children. So for example, we have some special schools only for deaf children. So parents might choose for their child to go there so that they can sign with other children who are deaf. Whereas if they went to their local school and they were the only deaf child, they might not be able to communicate as well. We've spent a lot of time talking about kids with disability. But when we talk about inclusive education, it is broader than just children with disability. So when we talk about inclusive education in Australia, we mean any child who could be vulnerable in a school. It might be that that child is a refugee. It might be that that child comes from a language background other than English. It might mean that that child is a carer for their parents, or that they're pregnant and they've got a child of their own. It might mean that they have a learning disability. So when we talk about inclusive education, we talk about all children who are vulnerable at school. And our job as teachers is to think about what we can do to help any child who is vulnerable at school. So here are some examples of children who might be vulnerable at school. Children with disability, children who have behaviour that is of concern, children who have a mental health condition, children who have experienced violence or abuse or neglect. They can be really vulnerable in schools. Children who have a medical condition that means they miss lots of school, makes it hard for them to catch up. We call our Indigenous students our First Nations students, so they might be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or South Sea Islanders. Students who come from low-income families can be vulnerable in school. Refugee or asylum-seeking children. Children who don't live at home, so for some reason they have to live somewhere else. Maybe both their parents have died, or maybe their parents have given them up to the government because they can't care for them. Children who come from different cultural or linguistic backgrounds can be vulnerable at school. Children who live in rural or remote locations, the further away you live, the harder it might be for you to get access to support. Children who are gifted can be vulnerable at school. They can get bullied by other children and they don't get to learn at the same rate as their friends, so their teachers might not extend or push them. Children who are pregnant or who are parenting, we don't have a lot of students that fit that category, but we do have some young people who do fall pregnant at a young age, and therefore they're trying to finish their school while raising their family. And then we have two groups of children that fit into gender diverse or don't identify in the same way as the gender that they were born with. All of those kids can be vulnerable in our schools. And so inclusive education is about trying to work out how to make sure all of those children can be successful at school. So we do have laws different to here. We have the law that says every child gets to go to the school of their choice. And there is legislation that covers all types of needs. So we have legislation around human rights. We have legislation around age. We have legislation around race. We have legislation around sex and gender, and we have legislation around disability. And all those pieces of legislation are designed to support inclusion. It is also the law that teachers must provide an inclusive education. So our law says teachers have to be able to do three things. We have to be able to differentiate for all children, for all of their learning needs. We have to be able to use strategies to support their participation. And we have to be able to ensure that we support participation, particularly of children who have problem behaviour. Now, I know you probably don't have any naughty kids in Indonesia. No naughty kids in your classroom? Well, you're smiling at me. I think maybe you've got a couple of naughty kids. We also have some naughty kids in Australia. And so it's the job of teachers to be able to support kids for their behaviour as well. We have one curriculum that is taught in every school across the whole country. So if I'm a maths teacher and I teach maths in Queensland, the same maths should be taught in every other place. And that curriculum was designed also thinking about children with disability. Every child with a disability in Australia is entitled to learn exactly the same content as their friends who don't have disability. How many of you like mathematics? How many of you, it's your favourite subject? I have one lonely hand down the back. One person said they like mathematics. No one else. Oh, I'm so sorry, you're alone. No one else likes I like mathematics too. So, in the old days, a long time ago, if you taught children with disability and you had them in your maths class, they would probably only learn some things. They would learn how to tell the time. They would learn how to count money. They would learn simple maths that you would do when you're out in the community. But you know, when you learn maths and you don't have a disability, you learn a lot of hard things. You learn quadratics, algebra, measurement, things that you might have found hard at school. If I've got a child with Down syndrome in my maths class, they get to learn those things as well. Now you might think, but how could they learn that? How could they learn hard things like algebra? I found algebra hard. How could they learn algebra? Well, the thing is, if you've got good teaching skills, you can teach most things to most kids. Algebra only sounds hard. 3 plus x equals 5. 3 plus x equals 5. So we know the x should be what? Who's our good maths people? What number should it be? 2. 3 plus 2 equals 5. If I put an x in, sometimes that makes people scared. But if I put a box there and I say what number should be in that box, most people can look at that and go 3 plus what equals 5? 3 plus 2 equals 5. The x is just scary. It's a way of representing a number we don't know. But if we get rid of the x and we just put a box there and we say what number needs to be there, then I can think about how I can teach that to every child. I can use objects. I could put 3 apples. And then I could say, how many more do I need if I had 5 apples? That's algebra. So a good teacher can adjust the content to think about how every child could learn it. How many of you have a younger brother or sister? Has anyone got a younger brother or sister, or are you all the babies in your family? No one here has a younger brother or a younger sister? A couple of you. So a good teacher might like to think about, how would I teach this to my younger brother or sister? And if you can teach it to them so that they can learn how to do what you can do, then that skill, that teaching skill, you can use with your class as a way of differentiating depending on the kid's ability. We have policies on inclusion in Australia. So we have policies that say every child with a disability can go to school, and it's the job of the teacher to provide adjustments for them. Our policies cover our curriculum that we teach. So when we wrote our Australian curriculum, we had to think about every single child and how they would learn that curriculum. Here's a really obvious example. If I ask children to do an assignment in my class, and I ask them to do a presentation, and I say, I'm going to mark you on your speaking skills, that will cause a problem for a whole heap of kids. Children who can't speak won't be able to do that task. Children who get really anxious won't be able to do that task. Children who find it hard to remember and then talk without their notes, they'll find that task hard. So instead of writing an assignment where we say, you have to give a speech, we might say something like, you have to do an assignment where you have to share information with your friends in class. Now, some people will get up and talk. But other people, they might make a PowerPoint presentation with all of the information on it, and they might just click the slides and their friends can read it. Other people might draw a poster and then speak to their poster. We've differentiated the tasks. Everyone is still sharing what they know, but now they can do it in a way that is easiest for them. It doesn't mean everyone had to speak, because that would be a problem. The government has a huge influence on what's taught in Australia, but our parents, particularly parents of children with disability, they are the ones that have helped us get better at what we do. I come from Queensland. In Queensland, we actually have a policy, and I've given the web link and you can have a copy of these slides. That policy explains what inclusive education means in my state. Not every state has a policy, but my state does have one. If you go to university, if you come into Australia to study with us, at the university level, it's not consistent what you would learn. So Dr. Petra and Stefarisco, we've been looking at what we teach at university, and it doesn't look the same everywhere. What you might learn at my university could be different to a university that is only 15-minute drive away. There's no rule except that we must include one unit or course in the degree that covers inclusive education. Every teacher who graduates from university must learn one unit on inclusive education. After that, when you graduate, most teachers will need to go and do some more learning, because that won't be enough on its own. So they will go to professional development days. They might also come back to university and do some postgraduate study around students with disability and inclusive education. So I mentioned that every child with who is vulnerable is entitled to go to school, and it's the job of teachers to make sure that they're included. So we talk about whole school inclusion, not just inclusion in the classroom, but inclusion out in the playground, and inclusion if the school goes on an excursion, and an inclusion if the student goes on camp. Every part of the school needs to be inclusive. And our job is to identify any barrier, anything that prevents children from accessing school fully. If we notice that there's something that stops children from accessing school fully, we have to change things. So I'll give you an example that might make sense to you. Children in our school who are culturally diverse sometimes can be vulnerable. Now, I notice in the room a lot of girls are wearing hijab. In Australia, it's a requirement when you go out to play at lunchtime that you wear a hat, because it's hot and our sun causes skin cancer later in life. But if you're wearing hijab, sometimes the hats that the school has don't sit comfortably with your scarf. And so when we know that that's a barrier, when students say to us, I try to wear my hat but it keeps slipping off, or I try to wear my hat but it gets caught on my hijab, and then when I take my hat off, it moves my scarf, and I don't want that to happen, then it's our job as teachers to work out how can we make an adjustment. Do we need a different style of hat? Do we need to put up more shade areas so that children can play in the shade rather than out in the sun, and that way they don't have to wear a hat? And wearing a hat can be difficult for lots of kids. It can be difficult if you're wearing a scarf. It can be difficult if you have your hair up in a ponytail. It can be difficult if you find having things on your head causes you a headache. It can be difficult if you put something on your head and it makes you feel anxious. Some children with autism, if you put a hat on, they get very distressed. Some children sweat a lot out of their head. And so when they put a hat on, it makes them feel bad, makes them feel a bit sick. So we have to think about all of the rules that we have and what we can do to change them if that rule makes it hard for someone. I'm so sorry about that background feedback. I know that can be really hard to listen to. I seem to have locked up my slides. It's just stopped moving. Okay, I wonder if it's possible to play this video. It has sound in it. I might get you to play it for me. So this video shows you a bad example of inclusion. It looks like this little girl is included. She is in the classroom and all of the other children are there, but she is sitting all the way down the back on her own with a teacher aide. Now as you watch the video, this little girl is now sitting towards the front of the room. You can see other children are near her. She is doing an activity and the student next to her is doing the same activity. She is engaged in the lesson and being treated like everybody else within the classroom. We have moved beyond having children sit down the back of the room to now this point where we have children learning alongside their friends, doing the same activities. With the help, there is a teacher aide there who is helping, but she's also at times working with her friends and working with other children in the room. This is one of our schools in Queensland, and it's a fairly typical example of what inclusion looks like in schools in Australia. As you watch, you can't even spot her now. From the back, it's not easy to tell which child has the disability. She just blends in as part of her class, doing the same activities as all of the other children, working in groups alongside her friends. All right, thank you. We'll jump to the next slide. In this document, and this is a lot of information on the screen, so as I said, you will get a copy of the slides if you want to read more about this. In our schools in Australia, we have started to go in and measure whether the school is really inclusive. So this tool was created for our schools, and it's called Signposts for School Improvement, Inclusive Education. And it talks about how we can improve inclusive education across 9 different areas. And every one of our schools is being assessed against this tool to get a sense of how inclusive we are. We only have a few minutes to go, and then I'm going to throw it over to you for questions, if you have questions. But I have a little bit of information about some of the strategies that we use to support inclusion. So I have some information on how we personalise learning. You might have also heard of an individual education plan. So I have some information for you on how IEPs work in Australia. So these slides will be available for you to have a look at. The key term that we use in Australia is adjustments. In America, they call it accommodations, but it's the ways that we make changes to what we're doing so that children with disability can learn at school. All right, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to open it up for questions. I'll skip past that. Thanks for the chance to talk to you today about inclusive education, and I wonder if I can answer any questions for anybody. If you say the question, I'll repeat it so that the people on Zoom can hear it. So if you could just use your loudest voice. Who was our first question from?
Okay, the first question from Mr. Nazil. Actually,
my maths friend.
Yeah. She's your friend.
Tell me your question. Perfect. Thank you.
Deaf, something like that.
Thank you. Thank you. So just repeating the question for those who are on Zoom. The question was, in Australia, and in Queensland particularly where I come from, are there 2 types of schools? One is an inclusive school where children with disability can go, or are there children that go to different schools? And if there are different schools, what do they look like? So we do have 2 types of schools. Nearly all children with disability go to an inclusive, regular school. But a small number of children with disability still go to separate schools. Some children might have autism and they might go to a school only for children with autism. Some go to a school that includes children with a broad range of disability. So they might have children that are blind and children that are deaf and children that have intellectual disability and children with autism. It could be a mix. But most children go to their local school. Most children, 80% of them.
Okay, that is the answer. How is Mr. Nazil? Is it answer your question? So they're still separated, yeah. Depends on the need.
So how do we treat children with other disabilities? It depends on where they go. If children with disability go to regular schools, then we provide adjustments for them on the basis of their disability. So if you are deaf, you might have an interpreter come into your classroom to interpret lessons for you. If you're blind, your teacher might have printed your materials on large paper or maybe had them printed in Braille, depending on how you need to access. If you have autism, the teacher might have taken the fluorescent lights out of the classroom because they're flickering and that can be problematic for children who have autism. So you get treated on the basis of what your need is, and our job is to identify your needs, and once we know what your need is, then we provide adjustments to support those needs. Thanks for your question. There was a question over here, you said? Oh, thank you. We have a microphone.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Then my name is Maura and I came from Education, Technology and Curriculum. And then I wanted to talk about the case that happened in Indonesia. So in Indonesia, the number of special school is still small. So if school capacity is full, students with special needs will be transferred to public school. However, there are challenges faced by children with disabilities that they often refuse admission to public school and are only allowed to attend special schools for disability. And I want to know about your opinion about the case. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a lovely question. And we were the same in Australia for a while. So there was a time in Australia where we were exactly the same as you, that some people with disability weren't allowed to go to their regular school and they had to go to a school for children with disability, to a special school. Because we had changes in our law, now children can go to any school they want. And the only person who gets to make that decision is the child's parents. If I turn up as a parent and I want my child to go to this school, they are allowed to go. And then it's the job of that school to provide adjustments. You don't have that law, I think. You don't have a law that says, do you?
Actually, we have
You do? Tell me more.
It's like in the government state we have we have to accept the students with disabilities in the school.
And do you think principals are doing that?
But actually the implementation is rather bit.
So we had that problem too. When the law first came in, even though the law said the school had to accept, sometimes the principal would say no, or sometimes the principal would try to convince the family to go somewhere else. So they might say something like, we would love for your child to come to our school, but did you know there is a special school nearby? You should go and have a look at that because they are so good at looking after children with disability, and I think your child would be a lot happier there. And so because they did that, sometimes parents would go, okay, I will go and look at the special school, and that meant that that principal could get out of taking that child in their school. So it takes a lot of work with principals to help them understand the benefit of having children with disability in their classrooms. And I want to be really clear about that. Kids with disability are not a burden. They don't make your job harder, they make your job easier. And the reason why they make your job easier is because you are a better teacher. You have to think harder about how to teach your subject. And that means you are able to teach your subject to everybody. Everyone can do it if you know how to teach it. It's only hard when we get stuck. When we think, I don't know how to teach this. I'm not sure how to help this child learn. But if we have children with disability in our classroom, they make us better teachers.
Thank you very much.
ternyata di Indonesia itu juga, di Australia maksud saya sudah diimplementasikan juga hukum yang kurang lebih menekankan bahwasannya peserta didik berkebutuhan khusus itu harus praktiknya orang tua itu sekolah SLB ya, sekolah luar biasa yang dengan individu baik atau dengan fasilitas yang memadai, karena ternyata itu adalah karena kurangnya apa ya, saya sendiri di sekolah reguler untuk menampung dari warga peserta didik dengan kebutuhan khusus. Oleh sebab itu yang sebetulnya diinginkan diharapkan adalah adanya encourage terhadap para guru bahwasannya dengan adanya siswa kebutuhan khusus di kelas itu bisa menjadi sebuah beban untuk seorang guru, tapi justru itu sebagai subjek untuk seorang guru itu berlatih menjadi lebih profesional. Karena ketika kita misalkan teman-teman kan calon guru ya,
That's exactly what I said. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any question from you? Okay, we have three.
All right, so thank you so much. Welcome to Indonesia, Prof. Put.
Thank you.
So, well, I'm Hutami. I'm educator at Educational Technology. Well, it's actually really interesting topics because, as we know, as like what you said before, it's very important for us as educators or for pre-students, pre-service teachers to concern about the conditions of our students or how to face the difficulties. But I'm actually curious about the situation in Australia. If there's a teacher that already works as a teacher at school, and then they don't have any knowledge or skills to handle, to face the students with difficulties here, is there any programs or special programs for them to train them to, to face the difficulties? Should they take certain problems of difficulties, like special for ADHD programs or just for autism, or the certain difficulties, or they can't take all of the problems or difficulties of students? So, and how long is the programs in Brisbane?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a really good question. So, yes, there is absolutely training. Every teacher who finishes their pre-service degree, they'll learn a little bit in their degree. And I know in my degree, when I became a teacher, I learned a little bit. But then when I go out into my classroom, you always want to learn more. You won't have learned enough at university. You learn a lot as you become a teacher. And so there are lots of options for where teachers can learn more. Our government and our employers, they run training. So right throughout the year, the government offers training to teachers that they can access, and that training is normally free. So teachers can go to a one-day workshop, or they could go once a month for the whole year after school on a Thursday and learn more about a topic. So that's one option. Another option is there are a lot of organisations that provide training that you can go to a conference or a seminar, but they cost money. And in Australia, if you want to go to a conference or a seminar, your principal might pay for you to go. So you take a day away from your classroom and you go to that. Another option is that some students will come back to university and do postgraduate study. And every university in Australia offers postgraduate study in disability. So if you want to know more about inclusive education, you could come back and do a master's in inclusive education, where you will learn a lot more practical information about how to support children with disability in your classroom. That's one of the courses that I teach at university, is postgraduate study for people who have already been out into the classroom and now they want to learn a little bit more. In nearly all of our schools, we also employ a specialist in inclusive education. So you have a teacher who works in your school who is a specialist, and they can come into your classroom, they can demonstrate for you how to do different things, they can give you some support in terms of ideas, feedback on your teaching, or they can connect you with some resources that will help you if you're struggling with doing things. So they might, for example, take your unit of work and make suggestions on how you could make it more accessible for children who are vulnerable at school. So there is a lot of support available once people graduate. Yeah. I wondered in the chat, I just noticed there are chat messages that have come up from Zoom people. I wondered in the chat, thank you for checking that. Okay. Okay. Great.
Gak ada.
Okay. So, is there any one of you who wants to give question?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh gitu. Yang mana?
We still have a lot of time, don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Sivanisa Rahma, and I want to ask something that I experienced when I'm in high school. So when I'm in high school, I have a friend who have Down syndrome, but we don't do any special for he. Neither student or teacher don't do anything special. We just learn the same thing, the same method, and etc. And in the final exam, we are having a paper-based test, which is we usually just fill the paper, and the paper is gonna be like scanned by the computer. But there's no one help him to fill the test. And I wonder what we as a student can do to help our friends who have a disability to make them easier to learn something in the class.
Thank you. Yeah. So I actually got two things out of your question, and I want to answer a slightly different question, because one of the things that you said is that you had to do an exam and you had to fill in A, B, C, D maybe, or fill in dots, and it got marked by a computer.
Filling the dots.
Filling the dots, yeah. And marked by a computer, and he didn't get any help with that.
Yeah.
So in Australia, we have a policy that says in exams, children who have disability are entitled to certain adjustments. So if we had a child who had Down syndrome and they couldn't fill in the dots to fill in their exam, they would be provided with a scribe, and the role of the scribe would be they would write for that student. So they would say to the student, which answer do you think it is? And then they would fill it in for them. And by law, that's an entitlement. So we wouldn't have that problem because he would have had a scribe in his exam. And there's a long list of things that you can ask for in an exam. So you can ask for extra time if you feel like you take longer to read. So if you've got children who have dyslexia and they take longer to read than everybody else, you can ask for a longer exam period so that you don't have to try and read so quickly. You could have someone read the question to you, so you don't have to read it yourself. The person would read it aloud to you. If you could not write your answer, you could say your answer and someone could write out your essay for you. So we have adjustments to assessments that would get rid of that problem. And I would suggest that that could be an easy thing for a school to implement. The person who provides the adjustment is normally either a teacher aide or a parent. And they are trained in how to do that. So they come in and they sit with the child during the exam. I'm interested in the second half of your question, which was, you said, he learnt in class with you with no help at all. And you asked me at the end of your question, what could we do to better support children with Down syndrome or other disabilities even? Down syndrome is a really interesting condition. For a long time, we thought children with Down syndrome couldn't do things. And so we didn't really teach them much at school. We taught them how to wash their clothes and cook a meal and catch a bus, because we thought that that's all that they could learn how to do. And about 5 years ago, there was a young man with Down syndrome who in Italy got his Doctorate of Philosophy. That's the same qualification that I have. He got a Doctor of Philosophy and he has Down syndrome. And what that taught us is that for a very long time, we've had very low expectations of what children with disability are able to do. I have a colleague who works at my university. Her name is Professor Rhonda Farragher. Rhonda has a daughter with Down syndrome, and she is a professor of maths education. And her daughter is amazing at mathematics because Rhonda made sure that her daughter learnt how to do mathematics. Rhonda runs a program at my university with a team of researchers. All of the researchers have Down syndrome. They travel all over Australia and they collect data from people with Down syndrome about their life experiences, what it was like at school, what it's like to get a job, what it's like to have a relationship. They go out and do that research for us because they have Down syndrome, they have lived experience of what it's like to have Down syndrome. So they think about, how would I like someone to ask me this question? And they redesign the way we do interviews with people with disability. So I would say, in answer to your question, the best thing that we can do for people with disability in school is to have high expectations of what they can achieve. Because for a very long time, we've had very low expectations. You know, we think that people who are deaf can't do anything. We think that people who are blind can't do anything. We think that people with intellectual disability like Down syndrome can't do things. And over and over and over, they have proven to us that they can. And where it falls apart is when a teacher thinks that they can't. So the minute we think this child won't be able to do this, we have already altered their life because we have lowered the expectations of what they're going to be able to achieve. So if you go out and you are a Year 3 teacher and that's what you're going to be teaching, hold the belief that every child in your classroom can learn Year 3 work. If you go out and you teach high school, and you teach Year 10 or Year 12, hold the belief that every child can learn and give them a chance to try and learn what the other kids are learning, because they may just surprise you. And remember, we're all bad at something. There will be something that you had to learn at school that you were bad at. And some teacher hopefully spent a lot of time helping you learn that thing. So we have that same responsibility now to help all of the kids in our class be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have lots of people who have graduated from university with lots of different types of disabilities. So the example you just gave is a student who doesn't speak. We have a journalist. I don't know if it's me. We have a journalist in Australia that doesn't speak. Now, you would think that to be a journalist, you need to be able to speak, but actually you don't. They ask all of their questions with an iPad. They have all of their questions typed onto the iPad. The iPad reads the question aloud, and they just write the answers. So hold high expectations would be my advice.
That's right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants, I'm sorry for the last person who asked because actually we have limitation on time. So I think this is the end of the question and answer session. Maybe you can ask by email or something. We can communicate through other media. Is that okay? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the guest lecture session. Thank you very much for Professor Po that already give us the insightful material regarding to the inclusive education in Australia, and we really learn much from what already did in the Australia. I really hope that Indonesia can implement this too.
I'm sure you'll do amazing things. You've got some amazing future educators in this room because you gave up a Saturday to ask these questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Dan sebagai informasi, sebetulnya Profesor Pot adalah rekan penelitian dari Ibu Petra dan tim yang juga berkaitan dengan inclusive education ya Bapak, kalau tidak salah. Nah, semoga kita doakan hasil dari riset itu bisa betul-betul implemented di Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan dan nanti bisa dikembangkan lagi di seluruh Indonesia. Mungkin bisa berikan tepuk tangan dulu untuk FIPP. Hebat sekali ini para dosen-dosennya ya, luar biasa apalagi mahasiswanya. And thank you very much for all that already attend to this meeting. I give it back to the MC. Thank you very much.